Hey everybody, we are now into chapter 1.6. So this test this week covers 1.6 and 1.7. That's it, just two sections. So 1.6 is properties of real numbers. So there's a couple properties that you need to be aware of. Now you don't need to have these memorized, you just need to be able to interpret what they've given you. So the first property is the commutative property of addition, and they also give you the commutative property of multiplication. Now the only thing that you need to know about those two properties is that the result is the same no matter the order. So no matter how I add two numbers together, I'm going to get the same result. No matter how I multiply two numbers together, I'm going to get the same result. So if I took 3 plus 6, it's going to be 9. And if I did 6 plus 3, right, it's still going to be 9. So 3 plus 6 is 9 and 6 plus 3 is 9. No matter the order, I still end up with 9. And it's the same thing with the commutative property of multiplication. So if I did 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 2 is 6. No matter the order, it's still the same. Okay, but like I said, you don't have to have those memorized. You just need to be able to do the addition and multiplication. Okay, another property they're going to talk to you about in the book, in this chapter, is the associative property of addition. And they also give you the associative property of multiplication. All you need to know about these two properties is that the result is the same no matter how they group those numbers and either add those or multiply those together. So no matter how I add together 3 plus 5 plus 7, I'm going to get the exact same answer as if I did 7 plus 5 plus 3. Okay, so that's all that it kind of means. Same thing with the multiplication. 2 times 3 times 4, I'm going to yield the exact same result as if I did 4 times 3 times 2. Okay, but like I said, you don't need to have those memorized at all. You just need to be able to perform the operations, which you should be able to add and multiply. Okay, the property that we do need to talk about though, that you're going to see a lot of in the rest of our chapters, is called the distributive property. So this property is a type of multiplication property. So this one is important, okay? So this distributive property. And all of this is in the notes as well. Okay, so the distributive property. So for example, if you were given A times the quantity of B plus C, what it means by distribute is you are going to be multiplying what is in front of the parentheses to everything inside the parentheses. Okay, so this means A times B plus A times C. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply that. They're going to tell you to simplify, and let's say they gave you 3 times x plus 2. Okay, the first thing you're going to look for now when you're dealing with order of operation problems is, of course, your parentheses. We're going to look inside the parentheses. Can we do anything? No, I can't add x plus 2. They're not like terms, and we're going to get into that in the next section. So we can't add those together, so we're going to look out in front and see if there's something directly outside of the parentheses that we can multiply by, and we can. There's a 3. So we're going to distribute the 3. We're going to multiply both terms in the parentheses by 3. So this is now 3 times x. You're going to bring down the sign that's in the parentheses, so in this problem it's addition, and now we're doing the 2 times 3. So this would simplify. 3 times x is 3x. We still have our addition times 2 plus 3 is 6. So 3x plus 6 would be your answer for that problem. Okay? If we were given 4 times 2x minus 5. Okay? So the first thing we would check, can we do anything inside the parentheses? Nope, I can't combine 2x minus 5. They're not like terms. So I'm going to look out in front and see if there's anything directly in front of the parentheses. There's a 4. So we're going to multiply both terms by 4. Okay, so I now have 4 times 2x. We're going to bring down this time. We have subtraction in the problem. And I have 5 times the 4 out in front. So I would simplify. 4 times 2x. Well, I can multiply 4 times 2 to get 8, and I keep the x. Bring down the subtraction, and I have 5 times 4, which is 20. Can't combine like terms, so that's our final answer, 8x minus 20. So I hope you remember doing this distributive property at some point, okay? Let's see here. Let's do just a couple more examples. Let's look at something like 5 times the quantity of 7a minus 3, and I have a plus 2 that's outside the parentheses. I can't handle this plus 2 yet. I need to handle the parentheses according to order of operations, and I can't do anything here. So my next step now is to look in front and see if I can distribute, and I can distribute the 5. So that's what we're going to do next. So now you can still write it out like I did with the other 2 examples, or you can start doing this mentally. So it's up to you with what your comfort level is. So I'm going to do 5 times 7a gives me 35a. Bring down the subtraction. Now I have 5 times 3. Well, that's 15. And I still have this plus 2 on the outside, okay? So now I can combine negative 15 plus 2, right? Those are like terms. They're the same. So we know how to do that from before. So I bring down the 35a minus 13 as your answer here, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and look at if we had a negative. So let's say they just had a negative out in front of the quantity of b minus 2. You could have a problem like this, okay? So once again, we look in the parentheses. I can't do anything, so I look out in front. Well, this time I just have a negative, okay? What's going to be assumed here is that there's actually a 1 here. So this is actually a negative 1, not just a negative sign, okay? If this was any other number, the number would be there. So if it was a 2, right, the 2 would be in that place. It can't be 0 because then the negative wouldn't be there, right? 0 times the negative, it would just become 0, and there wouldn't be anything. So if there's nothing here, just a negative, it's going to be a 1. So now I'm distributing a negative 1. So a negative 1 times b is just a negative 1b. Now the 1's assumed. You can write it if you want, or you don't have to, okay? So typically in math, if there's that 1 there, we usually don't write it, okay? Now what you need to pay attention to this time is this is a negative 2 times a negative 1. So you need to pay attention to the signs. So I still have our negative b. A negative 2 times a negative 1 becomes a positive 2. So like I said, paying attention to the signs is very important, especially in this problem. So let's do one more that we need to pay attention to signs. Let's do negative 3 times the quantity of 5x plus, let's do a negative 2y. So we got, that's addition. All right. So once again, we look in the parentheses. I can't combine like terms. This is an x and a y. They're completely different. We look out in front. I can distribute a negative 3. So let's try to do this mentally. Let's do negative 3 times 5x. Well, negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. We keep the x. Well, now I have a negative 3 times a negative 2y. So negative 3 times negative 2, positive 6y. Okay, so make sure you pay close attention to those signs. Okay, there are more examples in the notes if you need to reference those. Okay, they may, I do want you to look at this one, they may reorder the problem for distribution. So in this particular problem, if you notice, the number that we're distributing is not out in front. Instead, it's behind. And that's okay. You're still doing the same thing. You're still going to distribute the negative 5 to both terms. And if you need to rewrite this so that the negative 5 is in front, that is fine as well. Okay? So then we can go ahead and distribute that negative 5. So I have a negative 5 times a positive 6. So that's negative 30a. Here I have a negative 5 times a negative a squared. Right? Remember that 1's there. So a negative times negative becomes a positive 5a squared. I cannot combine like terms because the a's are not exactly the same. That's an a and an a squared. So that would be your final answer. So make sure you're aware of this with the distributive property. Okay. Something else is they may throw fractions out at you. So you need to remember how to do fractions. We'll do one of those real quick. And then we'll talk about the rest of the properties. So let's do 1/3 times 3x plus 6. Okay, so once again, I can't do anything in the parentheses. This time we're going to distribute a 1/3. So now I have 1/3 times a 3x plus 6 times a 1/3. So now I need to remember all my fraction rules. So when we dealt with fractions before, right, in one of the first chapters, you have to remember this stuff, okay? It's going to pop up in every chapter, okay? So you need to remember fractions. So if you recall, you can only multiply fractions by other fractions. So this is a fraction, but this is a whole number. So you need to remember how to turn a whole number into a fraction by putting it over 1. Because remember, fraction problems are division problems. So 3 divided by 1 is still a whole number 3. 6 divided by 1 is still a whole number 6. Okay? Now that we've set this up like multiplication, if you recall, right, we would look diagonally, see if we can cancel. 3 goes into both, so 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 3 once. And if we multiply straight across, we are left with 1x. Okay? Now, if we look here, if 6 over 1 times 1/3, if we look diagonally, I can simplify the 3 and the 6. 3 goes into 3 one time, 3 goes into 6 two times. If I multiply straight across, I'm left with a whole number 2. Okay? So, like I said, just a refresher with the fractions, those may occur for distribution as well. So you need to remember how to multiply. Okay? All right, so that is distributive property. If you have more questions, please don't hesitate to contact me and let me know, and I can walk you through some more examples. Okay? All right, the next property that they discuss in this chapter is the additive identity property. All this is the addition of 0 to any number will result in that number. So if you added 8 plus 0, right, your answer is going to be 8. If you did, negative 8 plus 0, your answer is going to be negative 8, right? Anything I add to 0 is just going to be that same number, okay? Another property that they go ahead and discuss, it's called the multiplicative inverse property. So basically, this is multiplication of any real number multiplication of any real number and 1 will result in the same number. So if I were to multiply 5 times 1, right, my answer is going to be 5. If I multiply negative 5 times 1, right, my answer is just going to be negative 5. So whatever I multiply by 1, it's going to be that same result. So that's all that property means. And remember, you don't need to memorize those properties at all. You don't need to know those for the test. You just need to be able to do the math portion. So as long as you can multiply negative 5 times 1 to get negative 5, you're in great shape. Another property is called the additive inverse property. So this is saying that if you add two opposites, the result's going to be 0. So, if I add a negative 1 and positive 1, my result is going to be 0, right? If I did 2 plus negative 2, my result would be 0. Those are opposites. I'm adding them together to get 0. Okay? Another property that we have with math is called the multiplicative inverse property. So we already had the multiplicative identity property. This is the multiplicative inverse property. So reciprocals multiply and you end up with a whole number 1. So all this means is 3 times 1/3 equals 1. Okay, so those are the inverse. 3 over 1 is the inverse of 1/3. The 3's would cancel and I would end up with 1. Okay, so that's what this property means. And like I said, you don't have to memorize this, but if you can do this math and you can show me this work and show me that that's 1, you're in great shape. Okay? I think that's it. Okay? So that's the end of 1.6. So like I said, this chapter discusses 1.6 and 1.7. That's what's going to be on this test. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. It's really hard doing lecture this way because I don't have you in the classroom where normally you'd be able to ask questions. I could have you practice examples. I could see how you're doing and go from there. So please don't hesitate to let me know because it's really hard to know what you guys need help with. All right. Thank you very much. I'll see you back for the next video.